Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for yet another webcast brought to you in partnership with Center for Creative Leadership. My name is Megha. I'm from the People Matters team, and I will be your host for this session today. Today, we are discussing a very interesting topic where we've seen a lot of leaders having a confusion or a conundrum, if I can say. And today's topic is really developing leaders virtually, and we have a case study to share with you on this today. As we speak with the L&D leaders around us, one of the common problems or challenges that the state is how do we really create effective leadership development programs in an efficient manner, and these are two strong keywords: effectiveness and efficiency. So that's where we had this opportunity of partnering with Center for Creative Leadership, and they helped us design this conversation that we're having today around developing leaders virtually. And I would like to personally thank the entire CCL team, Samir and Muninder, and everyone in the team to help us put this conversation together. And this is really a part of the entire series that we've done so far. Because for those of you who've been hooked onto the series since the beginning, the first one was really around making digital learning a success. And then second webinar, we talked about how do you develop first-time leaders. And today it's about developing leaders virtually. We have the privilege of having with us an expert and an awesome speaker, Sameer Mehta, who's a blended learning leader at CCL. Sameer serves as the Digital Learning Products Manager at CCL, working with various groups to ensure that digital learning products and blended learning solutions are designed and delivered seamlessly to the clients. One of his passionate areas of interest is to design learning journeys for sophisticated discerning professionals that are truly immersive and blended. And apart from this, if I could take the conversation that we had last time, I know he's a passionate fan of Game of Thrones as well. So in case he throws some examples from there, so don't be surprised. Welcome, Samir. Thank you for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Megha. Really delighted to be here. I know this is the third of the three webcasts that we're doing. Had some great conversations with all the participants, great questions. And this time, with the session, what we thought we'd do is actually throw some questions in throughout and then also have the Q&A after. So
Sure.
I'll go ahead and share my screen and bring up the slideshow here.
Sure.
So,
So me just one thing before
yeah.
before you kickstart the conversation. I just
Mm-hmm.
have two things that I'd like to share with our audience. One is to really share a little bit about CCL, because I know most of them who've been hooked onto this series may be aware. But if we have some new people joining in, I'd like to share with them a little bit about CCL. So, for those of you who may not be aware, CCL is a top ranked global provider of leadership development and is also ranked among the world's top 5 providers of executive education by Financial Times and in the top 10 by Bloomberg Business Week. So, that's CCL for you. From where Samir is going to bring us the case study. And also, like Samir said, there are questions in between this presentation of Samir as well. So there are going to be a few polls. And we have reserved time dedicated for question and answers at the end of this session as well. So what I would request you to do is, if you could see the comments section on the right side of your screen right now, you can keep on putting your questions in there, and we will pick up the questions from there and be ready with those questions for Samir to answer once he's finished with presenting the case study. So that's those are the two things from my side, Samir. With this, I hand it over to you. I know the audience is waiting for it. Over to you now.
Perfect. Thanks, Megha. Just to confirm, you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, Samir, we can.
Okay, perfect. So I'll jump into this right away. And I think one of the factors that has been kind of driving a lot of virtual leadership development and this deep interest in being able to be effective and efficient in this space is the push to do less with more, to do more with less, right? There's a lot of statistics. I thought I'd just pull this one up. Uh, in 2009, 77% of corporate training was instructor led face to face. By 2016, only 32% of it was. So significant, we've seen a significant drop. The question is, how can we be effective in this space? Obviously, it saves travel money, it saves, classroom time and things like that. Those are sort of the easy, low hanging fruit that people can talk about. But how do we make this effective? How do we make it really valuable for leaders, and that's what CCL is all about. CCL, the Center for Creative Leadership, like Megha correctly said, we're very well respected in the leadership development industry. In many ways, we have pioneered many components of this industry, and we continue to kind of push that envelope. We continue to sort of test out new things, things that we don't know whether they'll go well or they won't. And we make mistakes, we learn very quickly from our mistakes, and we get better. So we're kind of a 50-year-old startup in some ways, if you think about it. uh, just a quick kind of reconnect from the first session. We talked about various digital learning initiatives. Today we'll really focus on virtual instructor-led training combined with blended learning in some ways. So I think it's some of these divisions are somewhat forced. For us at CCL, we really want to make sure that we touch the learners in the way, in the modality and cadence that makes the most sense for them. Right? But what I wanted to do in today's session, I think I mentioned this earlier on, is really interact with you all throughout. And so I believe the team at People Matters has sent you a chat question through the chat. If not, you can open your phones, your smartphones, open the browser and go to pollev.com/lead poll and answer this one question for me. What are the biggest challenges or problems that you have seen or expect in delivering leadership development programs virtually, in a virtual format? So if you can take a second to just kind of share your perspective, I think that will help all of us here on the session together have a sense of where people are coming from. And also for me, as I go through, it'll help me perhaps uh, speak to some of the challenges that folks have raised. So please take a second and just share some input from your side. And I know the poll will ask you for your name. You can choose to share it or not. It will remain anonymous. We won't see who is posting any sort of inputs here. I know this is the first poll, so you're probably typing up the URL and things like that. What I'll ask you to do after this poll is we'll have similar questions coming up later. So keep that URL open. When I have a new question, it'll pop up for you automatically. Megha, Reshma, are you getting any kind of chat responses about challenges folks are facing, or are we just waiting?
So Samir, as of now, we do not have anything coming in from the folks in terms of challenges.
Okay.
Mhm. Maybe I think what you said, that this is since the first time people are just getting onto
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, this is perfect. I wanted to do this. This is somewhat unfamiliar territory, right? I mean, at least for us as a group, we haven't done this before. Lack of immersiveness, that's a good one. But I really wanted to push the envelope a little bit and have this sort of on-screen interaction. All right. Now the inputs are starting to come
Yeah.
in. Involvement of participants on online sessions. Have seen people not strongly contributing. The attention span, yeah, email is right there, right? Efficacy of the programs, and that's hard somehow um to think about application and measurement of leadership development. Yep, in the virtual space, how do we think about that? And that's something I'll specifically talk about. Um, I will talk about the attention span questions as well. How to bring in the personal connect, that's a key one. Learner engagement, yeah, I think these are all very, very valid issues um, that folks are bringing in. So I'll just give it another 30 seconds maybe, and then we'll kind of jump to see if there's one more or a couple more challenges that folks have in mind. But these are really solid ones, I think. These are things that we definitely thought about, many times faced as we were developing some of our early virtual leadership programs. More effective, it's also impact on attention. Technology becomes a challenge. This is so true. I talk to organizations uh, that are delivering or opening out things like this. Um, and technology has been one of the biggest challenges. Query resolution, queries are associated with softer aspects, sort of the human aspects of L&D. And then there's one more, lack of identification. Sort of a wide spectrum in terms of virtual. What we're doing today is really a webcast. A lot of folks coming in, as against sometimes when you do more of a small private group. All right, perfect. Wonderful, wonderful inputs. I think I can say that in terms of the problems that I've seen folks bring up today and what I've heard from others in working with clients across the world, very much aligned. Metrics, yep. So I'm going to move on. And if you have more sort of thoughts, please do send them through chat. But what I'll ask you to do is leave that browser window open. So polev.com/lead poll. Uh, the next question will sort of auto populate there. So if you can come back to the Google Hangouts, if you did it from your desktop or if you did it on your phone, just put your phone aside and we'll move on. And we'll come back to kind of another question as we go along. Right. So Megha already said this for us. I won't deliberate the point. We've been doing a lot of work with clients around the world for a long time. We learn from our clients continuously. We push the envelope in doing more and more innovative things that help leaders develop. Right? Our sole mission is to advance the understanding, practice, and development of leadership for the benefit of society worldwide. That's why we exist. That's why we do everything that we do. The fact that we're ranked number 4 is because we care deeply about the leaders that we develop. Right? We are on 6 continents because we want to develop leaders around the world. That's our solitary mission. All these other things happen because of it. Um, Once again, there is a great impact of leadership development on the business side of things. Bottom line financial performance. This is from CCL Research. Attracting and retaining talent, driving strategy execution, increasing organizational agility, and success in navigating change. And this one I think is critical to especially virtual leadership development. A lot of clients that we work with today have actually sort of come to us and said, you know what, we want to do this program in a blended or a virtual way because that's the world that our leaders are living in. And how can we sort of send them off to purely face to face work? We do a lot of blended work, face to face, digital, virtual, all combined together. And the point a lot of organizations are making to their leaders is, why should you develop as a leader in sort of this bubble of no technology and then go back to the reality, which is deep immersion in technology? So I want to ask the group another quick question here. This is just a quick yes or no, but do you have any totally virtual development programs today? So again, your answers are anonymous. If you will take a second and answer this, we'll just get a sense of sort of where the room is in terms of purely um, virtual. So we're at 50-50. This is live scoring right now. Oh, someone withdrew theirs. All right. Okay. Interesting. Okay. This is interesting. All right. So we got a good mix. This is great. I think we've got a really nice mix of yes and no here. So that's pretty neat. Wow, this is stabilized exactly at 50%. I would not have bet on this. Oh, okay, okay, okay. I promise you, I'm not tampering with this. This is coming through your feedback. Um, I'll pull up the exact numbers later on and kind of make some more sense of this. But great. Okay. So as we go along, right, through chat or through these questions that I'll have, please do share your perspective. I do a lot of work in the virtual space, but by no means do I know everything or have all the answers. I have a lot of examples and things that have worked well for us, so today through chat or as we go along, please do share what you've learned. some best practices that you've had, things like that. So please feel like this is an environment for all of us to learn from each other. I don't want it to be a one way. Okay. So let me now go into the case, right? I promised to come here with a case study. So let me kind of set the stage a little bit. Uh, our client organization did an internal discovery. They completed an assessment of their leaders around their revised leadership competencies in 2013. What they found was leading in a matrix environment. They had gone to a heavily matrix structure, uh, and they really had to make a strategic move in terms of how the organization was approaching its market. And so these were two key areas that they wanted to develop, and they wanted to deliver a rich program addressing these areas. And why they wanted to do it virtually was because they had a global audience, they had a budget for leadership development, but they really wanted to cut down on travel. And they said, we want to do this in a way that mimics the kind of business reality that we're living in today and going forward. And so uh, they essentially sought out a number of vendors whose content aligned with their needs, right? Leading in a matrix environment and strategic leadership. And so for all of you, we've got a lot of L&D leaders on the call today. So I kind of want to throw this question out to you, which is, what would you look for in a partner? Let's assume you're going out to look for partners in the marketplace, vendors that might be able to service a need like that. What would you look for? So go back again to that URL and say, let's say you're out in the market, you're putting an RFP together, or you're seeking out some partners. What would you look for? Mhm. Deep industry experience, expertise, yeah. Cost effectiveness, agility for needs, yeah. Track record. Mhm. These are three powerful points coming in. Yep, very valid. Mhm. Yeah, we always want to be able to share what's been done. Subject matter experts in working beyond boundaries, flexibility and ability to design programs. Yeah, neat. So I'll give it another 25 seconds or so. Mm. Content as per the organization need. Yeah. Oh, great. Understand the psyche of the organization. So really get into a deep conversation with you to understand you, right? Not to just sort of throw something over the wall that works somewhere else. Great. Wonderful, wonderful inputs. Forward looking, focused on trends, understanding the training need. Yep. Thank you. Great, great input. So we'll go ahead and obviously, since I'm telling this case study story, they chose CCL. So that was not much suspense there. But this is what our clients told us, and a lot of these slides that I'm presenting to you today, we actually made a presentation at ATD conference back in 2016. They invited us to present on the solution that we created in 15 ranking. We've gotten our 2017 rankings. We're still number 4, but they wanted someone credible, right? I think that came up in the comments before. They wanted someone with deep subject matter expertise, uh, and we had that. We have research on those particular areas of leading in a matrix environment as well as leading strategically. That was very credible, and they really wanted to push all the vendors that we talked to them as we built a relationship with them. We really understood that they were challenging all of their vendors to say, look, this is a senior audience, these people have never done virtual leadership development before. Are you up for it? And a lot of people have done virtual leadership development, blended stuff, but when you get to senior audiences, that starts to thin out pretty quickly. And so that's why they chose CCL. We were actually quite upfront with them to say that we have done immense amounts of leadership development, we've done immense amounts of work in the virtual space, but this would be a new design. And this goes back to somebody's comment previously, which is, need to understand our psyche, understand our training needs. So we said, this is going to be built for you. We're not taking something that we did somewhere else and just giving it to you and saying this was going to work for you. And so what we built out was sort of a course framework that had, and this was really in partnership with our client, right? It wasn't like CCL built it and ran it without talking to our client. We were in constant conversations, weekly, multiple times weekly. But we designed two modules. The first was leading effectively in a matrix environment. The second was leading strategically. Each module was designed as 7 sessions: three live WebEx training platform sessions, three self directed sessions using CCL's digital learning platform, and then one internal Yammer based session for some social interaction that they wanted to drive the Yammer platform that they had acquired. So that's kind of the really high level. Two modules, 7 sessions each, and we said each session will be done over a week. So we were really looking at a 16-week experience because we took a 2 week break in between. So 16 weeks is a long time, right? It's a long time to keep people committed. Uh, Kind of going back to the content, we used research that CCL has done with a global audience on boundary spanning leadership that really talks about kind of how to succeed in this matrix environment where it's not just me or you or my department or your department, all these things are interwoven. So that was module one. Leading in a matrix environment was built on the principles of boundary spanning leadership. And then leading strategically was built on this book that we have called Becoming a Strategic Leader, which also features in another program that we run called Leading Strategically, which is a face to face. This was entirely virtual for a senior audience. Um, and so these were kind of the building blocks. This is the starting point, the the well tested validated research that says here is something that we know works for a senior leader population. uh, any of our designs, we always believe in this approach of prepare, engage, apply. There's not an event and like a little pre and a little post. You must prepare for your leadership development, truly engage in it, and then apply it. And we really do this in multiple cycles. uh, I'm going to show you a very high level view of what we designed and delivered for the strategic leadership module. Right? I won't go into the leading in a matrix environment, but it was very similar. But week one was actually a self paced week. We essentially gave them a, a chapter to read, watch, some questions to ask themselves as well as their boss before they came in. Week two, we did a WebEx, a 90-minute WebEx, really defining what is strategic leadership and engaging with them. Week three, they went off and did some live projects in their workplace. Week four, we came back on WebEx, had a longer session, actually 120-minute session, which is really about as long as you should ever go on a VILT. Week five, they went off and worked in teams, doing some cultural analysis, and they had to come back and present that in week six. And week seven onwards, they were interacting with each other on their own internal social media platforms. So we were really setting them up to have connections and to work with each other. So what we knew going into this experience was, there is great importance in building rapport. It's critical to engage interactively. It's critical to consider time zones. So what time do we do this? We have people from North America, from both coasts in North America. We have people from Europe. We had people from China. We had people from India, all getting together. So what time is a good time to do this? you know Graphic appeal was critical. And for the staff, you really need people who are tech savvy, both the facilitators, the moderators, as you said, and support staff. It's critical that you need people uh, to be well prepared with technical expertise on whatever technology you choose. We used WebEx, we have used Adobe Connect with other clients. We've used Zoom with some clients. We've used Skype with some clients. We've used GoToTraining with some clients. We generally use WebEx Training Center as our technology, but we are technology agnostic. If our client already has a system that they need, we'll use it. What did we learn, right, through this experience? The 80-20 rule applies in all industries, including ours, and specifically in virtual instructor led. You really spend tons of time planning an important event. And I think, I mean, this is true in the face to face world, in the classroom world, but I think it gets amplified significantly in the virtual instructor led world. I think in the space of, I think someone talked about being willing to be agile earlier on, and we really had to be agile. At the end of every VILT session, especially for the first few cohorts, we said, give us feedback. We spent 5 minutes asking participants to give us feedback right there, and they told us what they liked. They told us very very clearly what they didn't like, and we fixed it. And then, the piece about technology and things going wrong, I think it's critical to acknowledge upfront that something might fall through, someone's connection might drop. Uh, you might bump into things you don't expect. Uh, Murphy's law applies. Anything that can happen will happen. And then the other thing that I think was really critical in virtual instructor led design for us is the amount of time you spend together is very limited. Right? You will not, almost never get the same number of hours in the virtual world as you would face to face. Right? For example, if you have a 2 day design face to face, you will not on you really are unlikely to get 16 hours of virtual instructor led time with those same participants. So you have to use time differently. Right? And so what we did was really made homework the real work. The application phase activities, which was a continuous cyclical loop, we made that relevant. We made it things that they had to do on the job. And that really paid off. And this is another piece, once again, going back to CCL's research. This is research we did back in the 70s, continues to apply today. Megha, you and I talked, the percentages are not important, right? 70, 20, 10, it's a good rule of thumb to hold. But the amount of time we will get with, I think the takeaway is we get very little time with our learners, 10% at best. What we should do with that is, can we leverage into challenging assignments that they already have and help them make sense of those? Or can we give them new challenging assignments that help them in their organization that have nothing to do with what they need to do for your organization anyway? And what we want to do through the learning experience is also create developmental relationships. And technology allows you to do the 70 and 20 in some really powerful ways. Because, especially with VILT, the time you spend together is very little. So that's kind of your pivot opportunity. Right? What did you do in the real world? What did you learn from it? And now, what are you going to do next in the real world? You're really doing a pivot. And all of our virtual instructor led design, people talk about flip the classroom a lot. It was flip the classroom by definition, because we weren't teaching them stuff when we were together. We gave them that information through videos, through readings, through some other interactive learnings before they showed up. In the session, we were saying, how does this apply to you? And we were doing a lot of that. We used our learning platform, a technology that we have developed, to create a one stop shop for all the information for their experience. If there was a face to face, we've used it for face to face as well. But every step that they had in their journey was a tile on our learning platform. And we built this customized for them. There were ways to sort of connect to a key leadership challenge. We had each leader identify a challenge and take that through both those modules. They got to know their cohort, and if they wanted to set up tasks and manage those tasks, they were able to do that through that technology as well. So we're using technology in the asynchronous space, synchronous space simultaneously. What did we learn? Right? We really learned in, especially in the virtual instructor led time, is there's great importance in our voice. It's scary a little bit to ask for feedback in every session, but we need to. As facilitators, as much as we can, as much as the bandwidth allows, we put ourselves on camera. We gave people a break. Today is a 60-minute session, so it's a short session. But anytime CCL goes over 60, goes to a 90-minute session, we'll give people a virtual tea break. We really try to create opportunities for discussion instead of just delivering content. And one thing I'll say, I mean, today's session, I'm doing a lot of the talking, I'm going through a lot of the slides. So you might say, he's saying this on a slide, but he's just talking, right? So I want to call out that a lot of the virtual instructor led work that we do, very often our cohorts are about 24 people in size, right? And it's much less of an inform, it's much more of a discussion, um, and we get them talking to each other. We do webcasts like these to share what we have learned with the community that we learn it from. And I know that I'm talking to a sophisticated audience today, so I know you guys will recognize the difference there. But I just wanted to call that out. We used a great deal of self-directed work. We leveraged every piece of technology that we had. Virtual instructor-led, we used WebEx Training Center. For self-directed work that had to be charted out as a one-stop shop, we used the CCL learning platform. For social interaction, our client wanted to use Yammer. We used their version of Yammer. And we educated our users on all these technologies and said what they were doing so that they would not understand what we were doing. uh, we really learned that creating connections between participants is the most important thing that we can do during our virtual instructor led sessions. We gave them more time in breakouts as we went on. We created a lot of opportunities for participants to give us feedback after they spent time together with small groups. We had them use way more surveys. We used chat continuously. So we were just sort of, bantering with our participants all the time over chat on WebEx. I suspect a lot of folks on the call today are fairly familiar with WebEx, Adobe Connect, and so on. And so we were looking at the chat all through, right? The chat is not a distraction. The chat is a communication channel. And we really focused on group projects outside of the live session as groups. And so that created more of those connections between participants. So there's a fair bit of data that we have in terms of uh, would they recommend it. We got a large amount of people coming back and saying, I was given this course as part of a new role, a new responsibility that I took, and really this helped me take a project through to fruition, because remember, it was a 16-week experience. But these are some verbatim responses that we got from our participants. So uh, just the fact that it was possible, we do not need to all be in the room. On reflection, I like the dial in virtual structure. So this was a real aha, because again, we are talking to a senior audience, and they really found a great deal of benefit from this sort of experience. So uh, I'm going to hit pause on my talking again and just ask for inputs from the group. Uh, having talked a little bit about this, can you share maybe one must-have characteristic or feature, now that we've sort of shared a little bit about this case, for a leadership development program for a globally dispersed audience? Like if you had to put one characteristic, what must it have? Again, if you have the browser open, great. If not, open a browser on your phone or your laptop, and yep. All right, I think I've got this set as a word cloud. I'll switch over to cluster. Yep, communication. Yep, yeah, and we that's a great point. Evaluation parameters defined in advance. Rework, meaningful dialogue. Yep, oh, these are great insights coming in. Relevance, that's so critical, right? And making them bringing them in is critical. contextual, practical, hands-on. Yeah, yeah. It has to be real play, not role play. Many times, agility. Yeah, and as a facilitator, you need a great deal of agility. We also have a role in any virtual work that we do of somebody called a producer. And I mean, you guys are seeing it today on the sessions with People Matters. They're wonderful, wonderful producers. I'm so grateful for them. But even when we do this with a smaller group, we really make sure that we kind of have a producer, their role is defined. We walk our participants through the technology uh, very carefully, and we have a good sense of how that technology that we're taking them through. The why is always critical with anything, the why and the what, and aligning. Yep, expected behavior indicator. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful input. So thank you, really appreciate this. So uh Megha, I'm going to kind of throw this question out to you now.
Mhm.
um, I've got a bonus case study that I can talk about, or we can kind of go to questions. So you tell me what you want
Um,
to do.
so Samir, if you have a bonus, I won't stop you from giving away the bonus to our audience. So I would recommend we go ahead with the second case study. How much time do you think you will need for the second case study?
Probably 10, 15 minutes. 15, probably about 15.
Okay, in that case, if I may just recommend or
Mhm.
request you to, if you could just take the audience quickly through the case study in the next 10 minutes or so, within 10 minutes, that will still give us about 10 minutes to take the questions.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Great. So, and if there's any kind of burning question that has come up on chat that you want me to address for the previous case study, I'm happy to take it now. Um,
Okay. So I think there are no burning questions per se. There are questions that have started coming in. So it'll be good to go through the other case study also and then take the questions together because some of them may actually be repeats. So I can just club them post the second case study also.
Perfect, perfect. Great. So, I thought I would kind of have a couple of cases because they're really different. They're both virtual, but they're different. This one was a senior manager population. That one was mostly directors and VPs. So the previous one that I was talking about, we were working with directors and VPs. Uh, Spread across the globe. This one was a senior manager population for a global tech firm, and they had people in three regions. They were divided into three regions: the Americas, which was North America, South America, EMEA, and then APAC. So they had a little over 100 people, and they wanted to take all of them through something in a short span of time. So uh, and again, really didn't see any point in uh, travel across the globe for that audience. They had some ability to do some things regionally, but not really across the globe. So what we talked to them about was, and they really didn't have the appetite, both in terms of time or budget, to design something customized, right? So they had this challenge. They've got these over 100 people across the globe. They really need a leadership development initiative was aligned with sort of a company culture change that they were doing. So they needed this to happen, but they had no appetite in time or budget for a customized design experience. And so what we did was we put forth something that we had built out. It was a truly reimagined online experience. This was a pre-designed, pre-built experience with a rich instructional model, sort of social and collaborative by design, had significant elements of gamification, something called an impact meter and skills tracker. Uh, Everything that they learned was shareable, savable, and it was secure learning. So it was sort of a private walled garden experience. So only people from that company were together. And again, we made it, although it is pre-built, each learner was bringing in their personal key leadership challenge, and each learner was building out a leadership growth plan. And they did this over a period of about 6 weeks in this course that we call Frontline Leader Impact. So this is a pre-built course We offer it for single company, single cohort, or we offer it for mixed cohorts. But over 6 weeks, they worked on these things, right? First week, they just started their leadership development journey. They identified their key leadership challenge. They got a baseline of where they saw themselves on those skills. Week two, we talked about foundations. Week three was all about communication. Week four was accomplishing goals through influence. Week five was about building support. And week six was motivating teams to greatness. Uh, Now, content was delivered in a self directed way through videos, pre recorded videos with CCL expert faculty across the world. But there was a real online moderator with the cohort throughout. So there was a real person interact with them through message boards, one on one, giving them guidance and coaching on their key leadership challenge as well as their leadership growth plan, and working with them in teams, driving them through many cases on the leadership content that they were developing. So this was a pre-built experience, but it really fit the needs for this firm. It's a really global tech giant, and it worked extremely well for them. So when we looked at sort of at the end of the 6 week experience, what kind of feedback we got from the participants, we asked them the question of, these are the six competencies that we developed: self awareness, learning agility, communication, influence, political savvy, and motivating others. And we said, have you already used or will very soon use what you learned in this course? And these are kind of the percentages that we saw. And 100% of the learners said that the impact of this course was extremely positive or somewhat positive. Um, and then when we looked at some of the verbatim remarks, we really saw interesting impact. These were a lot of people that didn't believe in online leadership development coming in, virtual leadership development coming in, but they went out saying, it was refreshing, it was interactive, it was a great mix of validation and leadership attributes, and a new way of thinking about leadership. So I bring this example up to say, uh, we've seen sort of various points on that spectrum of virtual, right? So you can go from completely virtual, completely synchronous, uh, completely customized, to something like what we just looked at, frontline leader impact, which is a pre-designed some solution that works because you don't have time to design, you don't have the budget to design something completely customized, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. you know we sort of play with the tools that we have. So Megha, I know you were hoping for a Game of Thrones reference thrown in, but I don't have an image here. But I just showed my daughter the movie Lagan last week. My daughter's 8 years old, and so I said, okay, now I think you're ready to see Lagan. And throughout that movie, sort of what strikes you is that this guy takes what he has, right, and gets the best outcome with it. Right. Hopefully, everyone, or at least a bulk of the participants on the call today, have seen Lagan. If you haven't, it's an awesome movie. You really should. But he's got these. He picks the players he can. He gets the resources he can. So we have to do the best with what we have. And there is a broad spectrum, uh, and we work with clients on all ends of the spectrum. I haven't even really delved into extreme self-directed stuff, but virtual, we looked at a couple of case studies. So Megha, that's it. Hopefully I stayed true to the time that we discussed, so I'm good for questions now.
Very well. Thank you so much, Sami. You've been a great what do I say, great moderator, facilitator for this session because you've managed to save time as well, more than what we actually planned to for the questions. So folks who are viewing this session right now, this is really your time. This is your 15 minutes to ask all the questions that you have for Sami because I already have a list with me. So, first of all, thank you so much, Sami, for those case studies, the bonus one as well. I'm sure that was a huge, it was a big gift for our audience because they came in prepared for one and got two. So, I have some questions coming in, Sami, and I'm going to take them now. The first question that's coming in is coming in from Sanjay, and he asks, what learning assessments have been used as a part of virtual engagement programs? So I think you talked about it a little as well, specifically the second case study. Do you want to elaborate a little over it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So, we've done pre and post assessments very often. We try to be careful because you don't want to ask the pre and post too soon. Uh, and with leadership development, knowledge checks can only go so far, right? What we want to see is behavior. CCL uses 360s very heavily. So, and we do 360s for development. So what we'll very often do in the virtual space is we'll kind of do a 360 before they come in, and we'll help debrief that 360, help each person, each individual kind of make sense of their results. uh, and then about 3 or 6 months after the initiative is over, then we'll send out a 360 again to the same people that provided 360s before, and see, has there been a change in sort of the performance of these people on the factors that they said they wanted to improve upon, as well as what they said the organization wanted to improve upon. And we really stress on the confidentiality of these 360s. They're only for the learner individually, but we pull aggregate data and discuss this with our clients in great detail. And very often, this aggregate data does help us talk about the impact of that particular initiative. And what we'll also very often do, especially with clients that we work with uh, long term, is you can start to track things like retention. You can start to track things like career progression, right? And then you get an alumni base that comes back to the program and really becomes champions. The second part, I think, in terms of assessments, is we've used a fair number of self-assessments, psychometric assessments, as well as simpler assessments that have helped learners. The second example that I showed you, frontline leader impact, that has a really simple assessment uh, built into it. Megha, if you don't mind, I'll actually share my screen and show you that assessment.
Sure, sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So, because when you look at kind of the manager populations in an organization, you're looking at a very large number of people, and so then sometimes with 360s you get rater fatigue, and you don't want to do that. So I'm in the course environment right now. Up here, these bubbles that you see, that's a skills tracker. I'm not going to do a deep demo, but I'm just
Mhm.
going to show you a simple assessment that we use um in the course. It's a very basic sort of uh, 48 question quiz, and we have them assess themselves on these six competencies: self awareness, learning agility, communication, influence, political savvy, motivating others. And you'll see these colors correspond to these bubbles at the top. And as they
Mhm.
go through the course and they engage in different activities, these bubbles are actually a skills tracker. So I'm clicking on the bubbles now. And as they move along, the course is assessing how much they have practiced the skills. And we want to be really careful about this, because by no means are we saying we know how good they are at doing these things just by looking at their activity online. So, but we want to gamify it a little bit. So you'll see here, I'm in this course, but I can see that I'm only the leader on communication in terms of being the top classmate. Kimura is leading me on a couple of other things. So I need to step up. So there's a little bit of gamification, but I know this has been a long answer to a great question. So I'll stop my screen share. Yep.
Great. I think that's fantastic, Samir. I hope, Sanjay, you got the answer to your question. I know, Sanjay, you have another question for us, but I will probably take one more question from Prashant now before moving on to your question again, Sanjay. So, Samir, Prashant has a very interesting question. So, he's asking, are there any inputs for next gen leadership development in family business? Keeping the context of virtual leadership development, I think in Indian family business context, this is a very interesting question.
That's a good one. I don't claim to be an expert on family business. Okay, so uh, upfront, I'll say I think what's interesting is CCL actually does a fair bit of work with family businesses in the US.
Mhm.
There are, and Prashant probably knows this, but IKEA, which we all sort of think about as this sort of conglomerate or whatever, is technically a family business,
Yeah,
right? Uh, I think with family businesses, the one thing to consider is succession planning looks a little bit different. Uh, Relationships between senior leaders in an organization look different in a family business. And so when you go to virtual, you want to be respectful of, I think, those relationships and careful not to put people in an awkward position. I think family businesses are very successful because they have a lot of transparency between uh, family members who are running different parts of the business. Um, and then also, I think the question is, what does the family business see as succession planning? Are they um, looking to go public and become less of a family business, or are they really looking to stay very much a family business and continue to grow as they are? So these are questions that I think we would ask our client going in and take those responses into understanding when we design.
interesting. I think those are fair points or considerations, I would say, when you go on to planning for a family business leadership development program. Very nice. So I think, Samir, I can see a few questions coming in. What I'll do now is I'm going to club together all of them, like three, four. I'm clubbing together because most of them are talking about the ROI piece. Most of them are talking
Mhm,
about the effectiveness and the measurement piece. So
mhm.
I'm going to take one question from Trupti, which really summarizes two, three questions coming on in this space, and it's really about how do you add, how do you include additional assessments to really map Kirkpatrick's level 4. So basically
Mhm.
talking about the ROI. So any thoughts there that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, great. So, yeah, and Kirkpatrick level 4 is kind of the gold standard, right? Everyone wants Kirkpatrick level 4. Um, I think so. Kirkpatrick level 4 is you're looking for business outcomes. Uh, Now, this is where I think if you hire a vendor or a partner to help you, this is where you really have to go from vendor to partner. Because organization like CCL, I'll speak for ourselves um, through kind of another example, but we have some relationships that are really deep with our client organizations. We've been working with them for well over a decade, in some cases almost 20 years. Uh, and therefore, we have data on leaders, right? We have some information. We have basic stuff. Did they attend? What did they think about the session? Now, in virtual, there's some interesting stuff you can track, right? For folks that have used WebEx, you can track how attentive they were,
Mhm.
right? You can actually track how much time they were looking at the WebEx screen. You can do the same thing with Adobe Connect. So you have a lot of sort of metrics like that. Uh, what you can't track using just the learning experience is what are these people doing back on the job, right? The 360 I talked about, that helps tell you what are the people around them saying they're doing back on the job, right? So that's data that CCL can collect if our partners allow us to collect that, if we engage on that. We do design evaluations for the Kirkpatrick. So that's a level 3 one, right? What changes did you see in this person, not stated by this person? But when you kind of get to level 4, we've designed evaluations. What you want to look at is uh, over time, because a leadership development, let's even say my first case study, you're talking 16 weeks, right? uh, 16 weeks in a leader's life, what are you going to see? You're going to see maybe that they completed a few projects. At a senior leader level, they're trying to make some significant shifts in their organization. You might see the beginning of a shift in the period that they're in the leadership experience. What you want to do is set up, I think someone made this point earlier on, is really design your evaluation metrics at the beginning. And that's what we do with a lot of our clients all the time, is to say, how are we going to know this succeeded, and when are we looking? How long is our time frame? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? Is it 1 year? Is it 10 years? Right? So one of the clients that we worked with, I'm at liberty to say this. is Mars University. So these are the people that make Mars bars, right? The chocolate company. And we've worked with them over 10 years. And what then you look at is, has the succession pipeline filled out better, right? Because that means, will your company do better? Uh, what you also want to look at is, uh, are we beating the market? Now, are we beating the market in terms of uh, a share price is a tough one, just because there are so many variables, right? It's very hard to say, oh, our leadership development initiative resulted in this. But what you can say is, who went to this program and how did their business units do? Relative to sometimes, now again, this I know I'm sort of giving a lot of variables here, but at some organizations, uh, sort of self-nominated participants come in. At some organizations, people are voluntold, like, you're going to this program, and it feels a little remedial. uh, so you want to know how these people came in, and then what were their outcomes, and also, were there people that were at the same level but did not experience this leadership development, and what were those outcomes, what were the business results in those groups. So I think the more data we can play with, the more we know. But especially when you're going to Kirkpatrick level 4, I think the one thing to be upfront with our business side people as well, right? As L&D people, we're always selling these investments to our business side people, and the thing to be upfront with them is to say, look, you might be talking to the CFO and say, I care about ROI more than you do because it's my job to prove ROI, but we need time, right? Any decent investment, you're going to look at it at a year out. You're going to look at it maybe a year and a half out. You can't talk about investment justifications in short time frames. So again, you can see I kind of love doing long answers, but it's a great question.
Well, no, that's fantastic. I'm sure you've answered a couple of more in while answering this particular question. So that's great. We just have 3 minutes left on the clock, so I will stop taking questions here. Unfortunately, all the questions that we have received, Sami will send it your way, and maybe you can
Wonderful.
respond to them via email.
Yeah,
And before we close, Amit, I'd request you if you could just summarize for our audience, top 2 or 3 key takeaways from this session. It would be fantastic.
sure. Thanks, Mega. So I think, we had a great audience. I'm so grateful for the interaction throughout today and the questions. I think when you think about virtual leadership development, uh, you have to know where your organization is, what the appetite is. It can solve problems that you previously didn't think it could solve. If budgets are small, very often training and travel are sort of put together. And if you break that apart, suddenly you have more than you thought. Uh, One thing you will continuously be surprised by is how agile your learners are and how tech savvy they are, even though they'll say they're not tech savvy. So I think that's another aha, is to say, challenge your learners, challenge your company to try new things, uh, because very often you'll be surprised by the outcomes that you'll see. So I think that's kind of my quick summary. We've had great success. We've had a great time learning, uh, and if it looks all nice and clean and rosy, that's only because we've been doing it for a while. We keep making mistakes. Technology fails, and that's okay. I mean, Microsoft is making tons of money, and everybody reboots their machine 2 times a day, right? You restart your office, you restart Excel. People will forgive technology mistakes a lot more than you expect. So give yourself some grace. Go out there, have fun, and if you choose to partner with CCL, we'll be extremely grateful.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Samir. Thank you. Thank you for being with us at midnight. I think it's post midnight for you, but thank you. It doesn't look like it's so late in the night. You've had that great energy and enthusiasm for this session. Thank you so much, Samir.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this session. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I'm sure you interacted and engaged throughout the session, giving you an experience of how a virtual learning could be as engaging as Samir just mentioned. And I would also like to thank CCL for helping us put this together because, like Samir said, they really have the experience and the expertise in this field. And this conversation was fantastically facilitated by Samir himself as well. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you all and wish you an inspiring day ahead. Bye bye.